I want to talk about my story. My story starts when I first moved to Canada. I moved to Canada when I was 3.5 years old. Previously, my family lived in Britain. And living in Britain, there were certain cultural norms and certain ways of doing things. But my parents were very Indian. My parents were born in India, pretty much raised very Indian-like. My father left when he was 16. My mother left when she was 18 at different times. The way they raised my brother and I was very much based on Indian ideas and ideologies, which is cool. I had a challenge with some of those ideas and ideologies. I had a challenge with their religion. When we first moved to Canada, we'd been here for a few weeks. And my brother was in grade 1 in Scotland, and it was time for him to go to school. And in Scotland, the kids go to school in a uniform. They wear gray pants, navy blazer, white shirt, navy tie. When my family moved to Vancouver, we moved to a place called East Vancouver. And East Vancouver at the time was a lower socioeconomic status and was a rougher and tougher neighborhood. So we're in East Van. Parents lovingly take my brother, they dress him up in the school clothes that they know best. We go to the public school, and we walk down the hallway of the public school. I'm like almost 4 years old here. Real or perceived, it doesn't matter. Because this was my perception and therefore my reality. This is what my biology, my nervous system perceived. We're in the hallway. And in that hallway, my brother was walking down. I was walking with him, holding his hand, 3 years older than me. Parents walking in front of us. And they're trying to find the administration office. And I noticed quickly the people in school aren't dressed the way kids in Britain dress to go to school. They're wearing jeans and t-shirts. So they stop, they look at my brother, and they start pointing at him, and they start laughing at him. Then my brother speaks, but he's got a very strong British accent. And then they start making fun of his accent and the way he talks. And then they start making fun of the color of his skin, and then making fun of the color of my skin, and then making fun of the fact that we're holding hands. I'm seeing this happen. I'm standing with my brother. He's taller than me. I look at my brother. He's bawling his eyes out. I see my parents standing in front, completely oblivious to what's going on. They have no idea. My brother's crying. They have no idea he's getting made fun of here. This whole group of young kids, kids are kids. Whole group of young kids is sitting there making fun of my brother, and he's bawling his eyes out. I sat there. And I remember the first 2 months we moved to Vancouver, Canada, East Vancouver. And I thought, man, I'm not sure my parents get it here. This is a different place. It's not India. It's not Scotland. Right to the point where I'm not sure that they can guide me. I'm not sure that they can protect me. So in that moment in time, I made this decision before my 4th birthday. And I said, I think my parents love me, but I can't trust them. Because they don't know shit. That's what I said at 4 years old. And in that moment, I embarked on a completely different path. And I've done a lot of research around this. Children are either parented or parented. Okay, so what that means is, parenting, I have a daughter, she's 2.5 years old. Parenting is a 20-year date. And in that 20 years, after that, your children will decide if they like you and want to continue a relationship with you. For me, my date was coming to an end at age 4. I was not parented. I didn't have a connection to my parents. I didn't understand their ideas, their concepts. I hated the church they took me to. Inside our home, it's like you're in India. You walk through these doors and you're in the rough and tough streets of East Vancouver. I was surrounded by crime, by violence, by prostitutes, by drugs. Got beat up a lot. Got things stolen a lot. I was at a time before the migration boom in the 70s. I got called names because of the color of my skin. And my parents didn't know what to do about it. Because there was a disconnect there. And that's where my layer started. That's where my armor started. And instead of giving my parents the gift and the opportunity to say, hey, you guys can parent me, you guys can teach me right from wrong, I got parented. I decided to allow the peers in my neighborhood to show me how to live my life. And this is what I noticed when I was 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, I lived on a street. I was one of the youngest, and the eldest was 18 years old. And there was about 25 kids that lived on the street. Biker gang lived in one corner of the street. So lots of visual input for me. At 5 years old, though, I noticed the guys that were tough, the guys that were strong, they were cool. They didn't get made fun of. People respected them. They got girls. So I decided, hey, maybe I want to be like them. And again, we're chiropractors. What does this relate to? This is my perception system. This was the reality that my nervous system was creating. So again, real or perceived, it was real for me. So I continued on this path. I won't go into all the details. I'll move through it quick, but essentially I got involved with bad stuff. Started getting arrested. First time I got arrested, I was 7 years old. Imagine that, 7 years old. Started doing drugs when I was 8 years old. By the time I was 12 years old, I actually spent time in youth detention center for weeks. By the time I was 14 years old, my dad had said, "You're so out of control, I don't even know what to do with you. If you do something wrong again and the cops call, I'm not going to pick you up. I'm just going to put the phone down and say you're not my son." Because he was at his wit's end, he didn't know what to do. I was literally getting arrested like every second month and getting in trouble and not going to school and doing drugs and staying out till like 2 a.m. Age 12, 13, 14. So what happens? Get arrested again. Cops pick me up. Call my parents to pick me up. My dad hangs up. What do you think I did? I think I was happy. You think I was excited to go see my father now that he hung up the phone? He essentially said, hey, he's not my son anymore. I ended up spending 6 months in youth detention center. Now, let me tell you about youth detention center. When you're 14 years old, most of the kids in youth detention center are 17, 18. And most of them are on steroids. And they're tough as nails. For 6 months, I got the living shit kicked out of me every single day. Every single day for 6 months. And every single day, I hated my parents more and more and more. The other thing that happened while I was in there, I got a PhD in crime, violence, and drugs. And I came out. My ego was so big, obviously I wouldn't go home. Although my parents would have let me come home. But I decided not to go home. Stay at a friend's house, exhausted dad, until eventually I found myself on the street. So there I was, 14 years old, homeless, living on park benches. Spent some weeks out there, and I finally decided, well, I gotta figure this shit out. I gotta be able to do something for myself. So I just delved right into that whole world and everything that I knew. At 14 years old, I dropped out of high school and committed myself on a path because I thought if I became one of those, I would be happy. And I got deeper and deeper and deeper into that scene. I got deeper and deeper and deeper into drugs. By the time I was 17 years old, I'd been in over 100 street fights. I was on drugs every single day. By the time I was 18 years old, I had been shot, bullet missed my heart by about a centimeter and a half at the stabbed multiple times. Pretty much felt like I'm a cat, had 9 lives. So, without sharing all the stories, I've had some really serious wounds based on the choices that I made, based on my perception system. When I was 18 years old, in 1 month I had 3 overdoses, and at the end of my last overdose, I was butt naked in an apartment, pacing around the room, and looking down the barrel of a shot-off shotgun. I tried to take my life. It was a failed attempt. I didn't stop halfway through. I didn't go through the motions. You can read my book and find out what happened. But in that moment that I didn't take my life, something happened, some switched, because the thought of not being here was far more appealing than the thought of being here, because there was so much pain and so much misery in what I was experiencing. But when I had that failed attempt, all of a sudden I decided, man, I want to be here. I don't want to go. And that's when a switch completely flipped from my life. And that's when my journey began. I share that with you because clearly I got my stuff back together. Because here I am 22 years later. That was exactly 22 years ago. My journey for the past 22 years and why I've learned the things I've learned is because I wanted to understand me. I never went to school for a single grade. I never went to school to get accolades. I never went to school because I wanted to help people. I don't want to help people. I wanted to figure out why I made the choices I made. I wanted to figure out why I created the reality I created. I wanted to figure out where things went wrong. I wanted to figure out how drugs got me there because my system was so polluted. Yet these people we call doctors who are supposed to help us, they want to give me more drugs to get out of there. Now, I was not school smart. I was almost 19 years old. I dropped out in grade 9. Had no high school education, essentially. But I said, so much of what got me here was drugs. And you tell me more drugs are going to get me out of here? So I actually made the decision when I was 18 years old to never take another drug again. And in 22 years, I haven't taken a single drug. And that includes Advil, that includes Tylenol, that includes anything. My dentist thinks I'm nuts. But she believes in meditation because she sees it in action. So what I want to share with you comes from all of that. It comes from a life that's been lived and a life that created a certain life and life that was based on choices, that was based on perception. And everything I've read to date, all the stuff I've read, all the articles, all the books, all the teachers, all the coaches, all the mentors I've had, have brought me to this place. Because 11 years of post-secondary school did not give me the answers. A mechanical education did not give me the answers. Becoming an exercise physiologist, getting my master's, getting my doctorate of chiropractic did not give me the answers. I had to supplement that education. All my answers came from the realm of physics. All my answers came from quantum physics. And I've done my absolute best. That's the washing machine. That's awesome. Hope our t-shirts are clean. All my answers came from bridging that model to this model. Because I'll tell you right now, I know with absolute certainty that this universe is not based on mechanical laws. And I knew that at age 18. And I've confirmed that with everything I've learned for the last 22 years of my life. So this is my story, this is my understanding,